Rev up your engines! Today I'm going to talk about how the Toyota Corolla is boring and why I like it to stay that way. Now, the Toyota Corolla is the top selling car in the world. Over 43 million of these things have been sold. But people say, they're boring. They're not like a Jaguar or a Mercedes or a BMW that break down all the time. How are you going to pay for these expensive repairs? Yes, they're boring in that respect. And people say they're boring looking cars. Heck, today, it's hard to tell one car from another. Most of them look pretty much the same. And yes, I have to admit, they do have pretty boring interiors, boring cloth seats, nothing out of the ordinary excitement. This one's got a CD player. Ooh. And you have the interior front and back. It's nothing to write home about. Under the hood, 4-cylinder engine. It does have variable valve timing, but it's certainly no race car. This 2010 Corolla has a 1.8, puts out 130 horsepower, no great shakes. And like many modern cars, lots of plastic parts. They do tend to last. You can see lots of 90s Corolla still rolling down. How many 90s of other cars you see still rolling down the road? And running smooth, not burning a ton of oil. And with air conditioning, it's still below freezing cold. And they've certainly evolved over time. This one's a lot more legroom than the Corolla I had when my kids were growing up. My son's well over 6 feet tall. He rode around in it for years. They got a decent sized trunk, and this one even has an auto trunk opener. Woo! Plenty of space going in. Nice deep trunk, proven technology that works. It's got discs in the front, but it's only got drums in the back. Drums in the back are perfectly fine for a small car like this. It's not a race car. No, this one's only got 99,000 miles on it, so it's barely broken in. It's got a very dependable 4-speed automatic transmission, including overdrive. You want dependable transportation? Simple and boring is often the way to go. Over time, Toyota has perfected the boring Corolla, so they get better gas mileage, have a little bit more power, have a lot of room for pulling people around with. And since they've been making for so long, there is a plethora of aftermarket parts that work fine, cost very little, that you can put on when they do finally wear out something. Lots of working room. You can easily do a lot of the servicing yourself and save money. Being a relatively low cost, low powered vehicle, insurance on these things is also cheaper than other vehicles. So you're not throwing a bunch of money away on insurance and on buying too much gas. Just don't go too far. The customer bought one of these things and he brought it to me. It was leaking a little bit of oil. He had 90,000 miles on it. And I said, hey, how often do you change the oil in this thing? And he said, I'm a salesman all over Texas, New Mexico, Arkansas, Oklahoma. He said, I put on so many mileage, I'd have to change it every week, so I've never actually changed the oil in the car. And he had 90,000 miles on it. Then I said, well, doesn't it burn oil now? He said, well, you know, the first 60,000 miles, he said, it didn't burn a drop. Now I got to put a quart in every 4,000 or 5,000 miles. Now, don't ever mistreat a car like this if you value your money, but it just shows how tough these things are. I had a customer with a Chrysler once, and he also never changed his oil. And that thing went 15,000 miles and the engine blew up. Really? The Corollas offer advanced, boring technology. Things that start every time you turn the key. Get good gas mileage. And are comfortable enough. They've evolved over time. The one that I had, hey, it was a 70s Corolla. It was also a 4-door, but this one has much more room. The seats, even though they're kind of cheap looking, the fabric, they're much more comfortable than the old seats were. And you can't even compare the suspension and ride. The old one had a solid axle rear wheel drive. This is front wheel drive, independent suspension. They really ride quite well. Sure, they're not as luxurious as, say, a Toyota Camry, but then again, they cost a lot less. They can also handle quite a bit of abuse. One time I was taking the kids to get some hamburgers, and 2 drunk lawyers' wives ran a red light, hit us, spun the car around, then hit it on the other side. We're all shook up. The police came, gave the women tickets, and said, we'll get you a tow truck. I looked at it and said, hey, it's a Toyota Corolla. We drove the rest of the way to the hamburger restaurant, drove it back home, Then the next week I took it to my body shop and they fixed it up, but they can take quite a bit of abuse. You would be surprised at what these tiny things can take. I see Toyota Corollas just like, and maybe the person next door. Hey, maybe they weren't the greatest looking person, but they were very nice and they were dependable. Might not be a bad idea to marry them instead of going after the Porsche, not being that dependable over time. Because I have the luxury of hindsight now. I see the old Porsche people. Now that I'm 66, they don't look that good now either. So now you know why the Toyota Corolla is so boring and why I hope it stays that way. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.